Well, good morning, Langsburg community. Good morning, First Congregational Church. This is Dr. Tom coming at you on this blustery, it feels like Mayvember, like November, but May. It's a blustery and cold day. I am going to take some shelter over in a little bluff of, this is this beautiful pine tree. It's got an awesome tree fort in it. And we're going to be talking about this pine tree today and what it has for us. We are entering into ordinary time today, and on top of ordinary time, it is Trinity Sunday, the doorway to ordinary time. We're going to explore what that means, ordinary time means, and we're in John 3, where we're checking out Mr. Nicodemus. For the third time this year, we've explored John 3, but we found some new stuff this time around. So we will see you in a few moments.
Good morning. Now for our call to worship. Call us, O Christ, and open the gate. Call us to worship with your mighty voice, the voice that sings through the rivers in full spate, the voice in which the forests all rejoice, the voice that rolls through thunder clouds and calls the deep seas and steep waves, the quiet voice that stirs our sleeping conscience and recalls us to the love we had abandoned, leads us through the parting mists of doubt, or falls upon us like a revolution, pleads with us upon the poor's behalf, blazes into glory from each burning bush, and bleeds out from compassion's wounds, raises our spirits till we dance for joy, and gives us too a voice to sing his praises. That was The Voice of the Lord by Malcolm Guite.
So what is ordinary time? It sounds really boring, doesn't it? Like ordinary. There's a lot of ordinary things that just seem really dry and blah. But I think the word ordinary actually gets a bad rap when it comes to ordinary time, because there are lots of things that are very ordinary that are also very extraordinary when you stop to actually consider it. Take this example, for instance. The sun rises every day. Every single day the sun rises. That's really ordinary because it happens every single day. But have you ever stopped and just watched the sun rise? And as you see all of the colors start changing, you go from that really dark blackness of night into the indigo blues, and then you get some purple shades, and then the pink shades start coming, then the orange starts coming, and then all of a sudden the sun peeks over the horizon or the trees or your neighbor's barn in our case, and you just say, oh wow, there it is. It's quite ordinary. Happens every single day. And it looks different each time. It's like no sunset is exactly like another. Atmosphere pressures change and cloud structures change, and everything is very different from one another. And yet it's very, very ordinary to say that the sun rose today. It did. Now, ordinary time, it's our ordinary lives. The first half of the liturgical year, we're looking at the life of Christ, which is really important to see the life of Christ all the way from Advent time, where Christ is said, here the prophecy of Christ is coming, all the way to Pentecost, where Christ has risen back to Creator God and sends the Spirit of God to fill all of the believers in the church, in the book of Acts. That whole season is really important to relive every year so that we understand the movement of God, the pattern of God, the narrative structure of the life of Christ that we pattern our lives around. Because if we don't pay attention to how Christ lived, then we wind up just living as the world lives, but with a moralistic or even pietistic flavor given to our lives. And what we need to do is look at the life of Christ, how Christ lived from beginning to end. We need that first half of the liturgical calendar, but then we need ordinary time so that we understand what it looks like to live the life of Christ in our ordinary, regular, everyday lives, so that our lives can look like, well, yeah, you woke up again today, but today is different than yesterday. You are like a sunrise. It's very ordinary. Your life is very ordinary. You wake up and you do a lot of the same things every day. You gotta, do your shower, and you gotta breakfast and eat and work and clean and play and all that kind of stuff. It's all very ordinary, but it's like the sunrise ordinary. It happens every day, but those who slow down and pay attention, they're the ones who capture ordinary time and understand the beauty of God within it. So the poet Gerald Manley Hopkins captures this concept of the beauty of the ordinary in a concept that is called inscape. You've heard landscape, and that's when a painter looks out on this beautiful landscape and then is able to paint and capture the glory of this and then show it off to people who might not be able to stand in this moment at this time. They capture the holiness of this moment here on canvas to display, to show other people. Gerald Manley Hopkins calls that inscape. When you can look at a particular tree, a particular field, a particular bird, a particular branch of the pine tree, and you notice the beauty of this pine tree in this moment today, how the wind blows through it in this moment, the noise that it makes right here today, when we can stop and appreciate the beauty of this moment. He calls it the inscape of something. The landscape is the external, what it looks like on the outside. The inscape is almost the story behind how this tree came to be and how all of these different branches came out, the age of the tree, how it got here, the storms it's endured. This tree has a holiness that is its own. It's just a common, ordinary white pine tree, right? It's just ordinary white pine tree. There's lots of white pine trees here in Michigan because that's like the state tree. But this tree, no other tree has been this one. No other tree, the bark looks like this one. And to notice the beauty of this particular tree at this particular time is to notice the inscape of something, the inner forming, and that is the holiness of this tree at this point in time. Artists do that, but people who aren't artists, you and I, will notice the sunset. And what do we like to do? I can't paint a sunset, but I've got a phone and I'll snap a picture of the sunset and then I'll show it off for years to come. Did you see the sunset at this time, at this place? I just captured the holiness of this moment, of this ordinary time in a picture and I showed it off. I captured the inscape of the moment. So to notice the beauty and holiness of a particular time, a particular place, a particular person, yes, because people even have inscapes. That means that is an inscape of something. To notice how the wind passes through the trees, yet it's unheard by millions of people, it still passes through the trees and makes the sound. It's like God is composing this symphony that only 3 people are ever going to hear right here at this moment. The choir of birds sing in the forest for nobody, right? The flower blooms by the side of the highway as people zoom on by. And it still turns its face towards the sun. And the thousands of cars drive by and never even notice. Ordinary time gets us to slow our lives down, to notice the inscape and beauty of this moment, of wherever we are, but also of our own lives. All right, so the entry point into ordinary time is Trinity Sunday. And my question was, why do we start the ordinary time with such an extraordinary doctrine of the church called the Trinity? God is three and God is one at the same time, and this we don't understand. And every time you go to explain it, you end up a heretic. So we can't explain it, and yet we have to try to explain it. Why do we start here? Because it's the single dogma of the Christian church. The single dogma. Now, I said the D word, I know, dogma, and I shriveled inside a little bit. I got a little bit, getting my inner fundamentalist all riled up again. But really, dogma is not essential information to pack inside of your brain and then demand everyone else bow down to. Dogma is not something we can mentally dominate to fit inside of our finite minds. Dogma is the essential mystery that can't be explained or understood, but we can submit and align our lives with it as much as we are capable. What I think when I get all antsy about the word dogma, I'm actually misunderstanding it for the word fundamentalism. You see, fundamentalism takes a whole bunch of things about the faith, boils them down and calls them the fundamentals. These are the things you have to believe. These are the bullet points of understanding you got to fit inside of your skull. And if you don't, then you're being kicked out and you're on the outsiders club. So fundamentalism takes everything religious and makes it vulgar by making everything as important as the Trinity. And so fundamentalism ends up being religious vulgarity because it makes everything that's in a faith of equal status with the most essential, and therefore turns everything else into an ordinary vulgarity. Which is why fundamentalism is more of a prison, because it builds walls of belief systems that everyone must adhere to. And it builds like these walls, and it has a single gate, and then it puts guards at the gates to say, here's who can get in and here's who we're going to kick out. That's what fundamentalism is. That's not what dogma is. Dogma is more of a single well dug in the middle of a land that people are free to come and drink from. And you know what? When there's water, people don't wander so far away from water because you can't survive out in the wilderness without water. It is the essential understanding. So why is the Trinity the essential doctrine of the church? That's what we're going to look at here in a moment. All right, so dogma brings us in contact with something called orthodoxy. Now, if you're thinking the Orthodox Church, that liturgical branch of the ancient church, that's not quite what we're talking about. Orthodoxy has come to be known in modern times as the proper way to know or believe or practice something. If you are in the proper knowing, behaving, believing, whatever, then you are considered orthodox. You're good. You're in the Orthodox club. You fit. But the word orthodox is actually two Greek words that has nothing to do with having the right knowledge stuffed in your skull. The word orthodox is made up of these two words. The first one is ortho, and we go to the orthodontist to get our teeth put straight, right? Ortho and dentist, those straight teeth, to make things straight and aligned. So the word ortho means to align properly. And then the word doxa is not information, to align information. The word doxa is actually the word for giving glory or worship to something. So to have a proper orthodox understanding of the Trinity or the dogma means that you have a life that is aligned properly in where you aim your love, where you aim your worship, where you aim your life. It's a properly aligned life. It's not a properly adhered to doctrinal statement. It's a properly aligned worship. And worship is just what we give our love to. So dogma actually wakes us up to the beauty of the ordinary, the beauty of the sunrise that's here every day. Because it gets us to wake up and notice the things that are here, the things that are beautiful, the things that are essential. Now this understanding of the Trinity is that God is three and God is one, and the three don't exist outside of being one, and the one doesn't exist without being three. There's the Creator God, the one from Genesis that looked out upon the water and decided to create something. There's the Redeemer, which is Christ, and then there's the Spirit. And Christ can't go get a cup of coffee without the Spirit and the Father. They're inseparable, and yet they're one, and yet they're three and distinct. We don't know how this all works, but we all know that they're all God. So we're not supposed to focus in on the specific characters so much as we're focusing on the relationship between the members of the Trinity. What Paul says is that the church is the body of Christ. So that means that this extended humanity branch called the church is actually the ongoing incarnation of Christ in the world and has been filled with the Spirit. So if we're going to draw a little diagram of the Trinity and where you and I fit into this and our communities, it looks a little bit like this. The Creator, God, is on the left. The Son is kind of the head, the overseer of humanity, and you're filled with the Holy Spirit. So you're the body of the second person of the Trinity, filled with the third person of the Trinity, and put in right relationship with the first person of the Trinity. And this is the work of Christ, and this is why Trinity Sunday is so essential for ordinary time, because it properly aligns our worship and our love to encounter the beauty of God right here in the ordinary, everyday life that is around us. Now this is the man who knew it all. This is Nicodemus in this passage. He's the man who knew it all, has all the answers, but finally encounters the right question. That's our story today. Nicodemus comes to Jesus at night. Now there's this weird pattern that I've never seen before, that is in verses 2 through 11, that starts with a we, it moves to a you, has a question, we get to a central piece, and then we work our way back out with a question, with a you, and then with a we. So it's like if you were to hold a mirror up to this passage, it's a mirror representation of one another. We have the we, you, question, central piece, and then we go backwards again, question, you, we. This is, I know, you're like, huh, what? Explain that for me, please. Now, Nicodemus starts with a we. In verse 2, he says, we know you are from God. He's saying we. Who's the we here? He's a Pharisee. And he actually says he's the Pharisee, like the teacher of the Pharisees. So he's pretty high up in this Pharisaical realm. So he has this affiliation that he comes to Jesus with, almost like a shield to block any kind of individual encounter with Christ. He's got his bros with him, right? His Pharisee bros. They're not there, but they're there in spirit, because he says the we. I'm affiliated with all these Pharisees, and we know that you are from God. So Jesus takes that we affiliation that he's using to protect himself from God, and he goes right at him, and he says, hey, you know what? You must be born anew if you want to see God's action in the world. If you want to see God's kingdom in the world, you got to be born again. So there's the we and then the you. So here, if we find that movement from we to you, where he just really pulls Nicodemus out of that herd affiliation, and says, I'm talking to you today. I'm talking with you right now. Because we affiliate for safety. It keeps us, but that safety oftentimes keeps us from owning and exploring things. And we affiliate all over the place. We affiliate with sports clubs. We affiliate with brand names on our clothes. We affiliate with, Coke or Pepsi. We affiliate with all these fun things, but we also affiliate with these political bents. We affiliate with religious bents, denominational bents, musical taste bents. We affiliate in order to find safety, to find belonging, to find group think that, well, I don't have to think about this because I'm a part of this group that just thinks this way for them. So it's almost like we get to skip out on the tough questions of life by just finding the right places to affiliate ourselves with. So when Jesus pulls him out of affiliation and just goes directly at him and says, you got to be born anew, which we've studied what that means in a previous passage. Nicodemus gets on the defensive here. He asks a question, but it's a question with an absurdity, where he says, what, am I just gonna like hop back in the womb and get born again? Like, what are you talking about here, Jesus? So you notice that movement from the we to the you to this question with an absurdity. That's a way that we deflect the direct challenges to our tightly held beliefs and affiliations. We oftentimes throw out questions with absurdities out there. We make straw man arguments and tear them apart, right? If we don't take the question seriously, then we're not going to be able to own and understand our own perspective on something, our own inscape of how we see and are in this world oftentimes remains unformed because we just affiliate with where we feel safe. And then when we're asked a direct question, we deflect it with a question with an absurdity. So then we have this central piece. Verses 5 through 8 is the central piece that he's talking about the kingdom of God. He's talking about the life from heaven. He's talking about the Spirit cannot be contained. It's like the wind that you don't know where it's coming from. It's unseen. So this essential dogma of the Church of the Trinity is not, it's like the wind that we can't build walls and gates and set up guards around this dogma or doctrine and then call it, we're the gatekeepers. You can't dominate God into a systemic theology. You can't hold God back from human beings because God is like this great wind out here. It's going to go where it's going to go, and sometimes you can find a little bit of shelter here and there. God is like this wind. Now we work our way back out. We had the we you question, now we have the question you we, as we work our way back out, where Nicodemus now asks a question but he leaves the absurdity out of it. Tell me what you mean, I don't understand this. This defensiveness is down. He can now engage with Jesus as his own person. And Jesus brings the you. Says, hey, you're the respected teacher of Israel, and you don't know this? So he puts him back into his affiliation, but almost anew, like born anew, like he was just talking about, where he's like, now all of a sudden I don't fit because I have a new piece of understanding, a new piece of information about God, a new perspective on this, and now I don't just fit into this affiliation without thinking. Now all of a sudden I can't thoughtlessly and comfortably just fit into what I have been going my whole life. And then Jesus brings it back with a we, and he says, hey, I'm just telling you what we know and what we've seen. He invites him into a greater and grander we, and that we is the greater church, the greater witness of, obviously here it is, the followers of Jesus, but then expanded historically in both directions, past and future. This whole big grand we is bigger than our affiliations. It's bigger than us. It's bigger than our minds. It's this great mystery. So will you use your affiliations to hide from God, or are you going to encounter a God who does not fit into your brain, your church, or your group? That's this doctrine of the Trinity. So Jesus tells Nicodemus that God has this unpossessive love that gives. That's what the Trinity is all about, is this giving relationship between the three members of the Trinity. So Jesus tells Nicodemus that this God cannot be packaged, cannot be PR'd, cannot be sold, cannot be contained in a building or a society or a religion, cannot be commandeered or mascotted for our thing. God is wild and free and far too ordinary to be hijacked by the dramatic. God is far too everyday to be contained to a day of the week, to a building, to a belief system. God is far too real to be fancy, far too beautiful to be glamorous, far too accessible to be packaged and sold, and far too infinite to be understood. That's this beauty of the Trinity, that we align our lives toward and submit into this great mystery that will never fit inside of our brains. Well, thank you so much for joining me here outside in this breezy Mayvember day. Thank you for joining us for Ordinary Time and Trinity Sunday. We're starting a brand new series next week called Ordinary Revolution. We're going to explore some of the book of Mark for this Ordinary Time here this summer. We might take a little hiatus into the book of Ephesians. I'm not sure yet. We might just stay in Mark. We'll see. We'll see. If you'd like to partner with us, there is a link down at the bottom, and you can type that into your little Google bar at the top, and we'd be very grateful to receive any financial support you want to send our way, because we want to be a community of hope, help, and healing for our greater community and for out into the interwebs and beyond. So I hope you have a great ordinary day. Go find something ordinary and just soak in the beauty of it. And I'll see you next week. Peace.